Hey y'all, and welcome to another What's for Dinner. So on Monday we had a cream cheese white chicken chili. So in my crock pot I am putting 1 can of black beans that have been drained and rinsed, 1 can of corn that has been drained, 1 can of rotel or diced tomatoes with green chilies, 1 package of bacon bits, the equivalent of 1 pack of taco seasoning and 1 pack of ranch seasoning. And then I put some broth base in here because I don't buy broth anymore, and 2 cups of water, but you can just use 2 cups of chicken broth. That will be fine. And I'm giving that a mix, and then I'm going to add my chicken into here. I like to mix the other ingredients first because I find it hard to mix when that chicken's in the bottom. So I just add it after I combine everything together. And on top, I'm putting 1 block of third less fat cream cheese, and that cooked 8 hours on low, and I shredded up the chicken, and this is what it looked like when it was ready to go. This is a great recipe. I absolutely love it. I've made it many times, and if you haven't made this, you definitely need to. It might not be the prettiest, but it is for sure one of our favorites. So it's a great meal for fall. I highly recommend. I'll leave the recipe link down below. On Tuesday, we had some Philly Cheesesteak Quesadillas. So here I am just slicing an onion up pretty thin. And then I'm also going to do the same with some mini sweet peppers. You can just use a bell pepper, but I had these that I wanted to use up, so that's why I'm using the miniature ones. I'm taking out the ribs and the seeds because I find the ribs make things more bitter. So I always remove those from my peppers before I slice them up. And then I'm going to just give those a really thin slice like I did the onions. If you prefer them to be diced, there's really no right or wrong way. Just cut them up however you like. Some people even slice up some mushrooms really thin for this dish, but we're not really crazy about mushrooms. I'll eat them, but they're not my favorite thing in the world. So I just left those out and just went with straight up just onions and peppers. And I really like the little miniature sweet peppers in this. But in my pan, I'm just putting some olive oil, and I have the heat on medium-high. I'm adding in my peppers and my onions, and we're just gonna saute those around until they start to get soft and change color just a bit. I'm also gonna season them up with a little bit of salt, pepper, and some garlic powder. I didn't put any onion powder just because I was using an actual onion. My husband doesn't really like onions, but he'll eat it in something like this. And I also put the Aldi version of like a Montreal steak seasoning in here as well when the peppers were cooking. Now I'm going to create a little spot in the center of the pan to put my shaved beef. I put a little extra olive oil, and I just kind of broke that up with my wooden spatula. It was a little frozen still, so I had to really get in there and try to chop it up, but it was fine. It worked out fine in the end. And I'm going to add a little bit of Worcestershire sauce as it's cooking and some steak sauce. I just add that when it's like halfway cooked, and really work that in. I think it gives the meat a really good flavor. And this is what the meat mixture looks like when it is done. It smells heavenly. It is so good. This is definitely one of our favorites. Now we're going to assemble everything. I just made my husband actually some Philly cheesesteak sandwiches, and I ate the quesadillas. So you just put some butter in the pan, and you're going to spread some whipped cream cheese all over a tortilla, spread out some shredded cheddar cheese, and put your meat, onions, and peppers on there. Give it a flip and cook it until both sides are golden brown. And this is what it looked like when it was all plated up. That's my husband's sandwich with some of the waffle fries that I get at Lidl. I just put those in the air fryer. And then I had 2 of the quesadillas. These are so good. Putting that whipped cream cheese is really what makes it for me. But this is what the inside looks like. If you have not tried Philly cheesesteak on a quesadilla, like, you need to do it. It is so good. My husband's missing out. He just wanted a sandwich, but I'm telling you, those quesadillas are delicious. So on Wednesday, we had this beef stroganoff. I found it in one of my Pioneer Woman cookbooks. I'll try to find the recipe and link it below. But here I'm just dicing up an onion. I'm cutting it really small into little bitty pieces. My husband swears he doesn't like onions, but he eats them all the time. I just try to cut them up really small so he doesn't even realize they're there. But he sure did eat that Philly cheesesteak the night before, so I think he likes them. He's just picky about them. But I'm also dicing up the equivalent of 2 carrots. All I had was these little baby carrots, and they were starting to look kind of rough, so I needed to use them up. So I am dicing those up really small and adding that to the bowl with my onions. And here I have a top sirloin steak, and I'm just going to cut that into bite-sized pieces. You can cut them a little bigger if you want to, but I was using a little less meat than the recipe called for, so I just cut them into small pieces so they would evenly disperse throughout the dish. So after I get them cut up, I'm just gonna season them with some salt and pepper, give them a little toss, And then I'm gonna heat up some olive oil in my skillet, and I'm just gonna add that beef in there, and I'm gonna brown it on all sides. I probably should have let it sit for a long time before I stirred it around, but I just kind of stirred it around, did my thing. And when it was fully cooked, I removed it from the pan and put it into a bowl. And in that pan with all the grease and stuff from the meat, I added in a little more olive oil and then added in my onions and carrots. And I cooked those until they were really soft and starting to caramelize a bit and kind of stick to the pan just a little bit. And then I deglazed the pan with a little bit of beef broth. The recipe called for some form of alcohol, but we're not really drinkers, so we don't have any alcohol in the house. So I just used some extra beef broth. And then I made a slurry, and I'm getting my sour cream ready. I think it used like a 1/4 cup of sour cream and a rounded tablespoon, or actually a rounded teaspoon of Dijon mustard. I went a little heavy-handed on the mustard. Next time I will definitely scale that back, but it was still good. But I let it reduce for a little bit, probably by about a third, and then added in that slurry and then gave that a stir. And then I also added my beef back into the pan, as well as the mustard and the sour cream, and I gave it a stir, and that was pretty much it. I think I might have added a little seasoning after tasting it, but that's what it looked like when it was done, and it smelled really good, so we were really excited to try it. Like I said, the only thing I would do differently is scale back on that mustard because it was a bit strong. Here I am seasoning it up. I knew I added some seasoning to it. So some garlic powder, onion powder, salt and pepper, you know, my usual staple seasonings that I use in everything. And here I am getting my egg noodles ready to go. So I've already just boiled some egg noodles, and I'm putting some olive oil and butter in my pot and letting it melt. And then I'm adding some garlic to that. And I'm just gonna let that saute for a couple minutes, and then I'm gonna add in some parsley. I think it called for like fresh parsley, but I didn't have any, so I just used dry parsley. And I used a splash of lemon juice. It called for lemon zest, but I didn't have any fresh lemons either, so we were just making do. And then I added in the egg noodles and just tossed it around in that garlic butter. And then I added some salt and pepper, and that pasta was so good by itself. So much less when we put that gravy on there. This was a really good meal. I just paired it with some of the bird's eye. I think they were like roasted carrots and Brussels sprouts. I just threw them in the air fryer, and we really enjoyed this meal. So I say try this recipe. I'll try to find it to link it. If not, it's in her dinner time cookbook, I believe. I'll put the info for sure below. And on Thursday, we had Salisbury steak from that same cookbook. So here I'm just getting some green beans ready to go. So I have a can of green beans with some Better Than the Bouillon, onion powder, garlic powder, Worcestershire sauce, butter, and some soy sauce. And I'm just gonna stir that around and put it on medium heat. And here I'm getting my Salisbury steak mixture ready. So I have a pound of ground beef, some Italian breadcrumbs, some heavy cream, some Worcestershire sauce, some ketchup, and some Better Than the Bouillon, and some salt and some pepper. And we're just gonna get in there and mash that all up. It called for like a bouillon cube crumbled up, but I just had that Better Than the Bouillon, and these turned out so good, so it was fine. And here I'm just patting out the patties. It said to make 4 patties and like run your finger through them. I guess to create like little crimps so they wouldn't shrink up. I don't really know what the reason was, but hey, it worked, whatever. And in my cast iron skillet, I have some butter and olive oil, and I let the pan get really hot, and then I added in my meat, and I just seared those on both sides until they were fully cooked in the middle. And then I removed them to a plate and started on the gravy. So, excuse my husband in the back. He was eating an orange and he was talking to me while I was cooking. But to the grease from the meat, I added an onion, and I am just sauteing that until it's really, really, really soft. And then after it gets really soft, I'm adding in some beef broth, about 2 cups, and giving that a stir and letting it come up to a boil. And then I'm adding some Worcestershire sauce, a tablespoon of ketchup, and I'm just gonna mix that together. And then I'm gonna add in a slurry, and it was just cornstarch and a little more beef broth. And that really thickened that sauce up, and I added the meat back into the pan and spooned some of the gravy over the top and let it go for about another 5 minutes or so. And this is what it looked like when it was done. This was by far our favorite this week, and the leftovers that I brought for lunch were just as good. I just paired it with some white rice And that was dinner. But this is all I have for you this week. It's another kind of short week. This week coming, I should have more recipes to share with you guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. I'm so glad you're here, and I thank you so much for watching my video. Bye, guys.